I've got so much, good morning, I've got so much to say, to give you of my own opinion this morning, that I brought my coffee with me. The state of affairs disclosed in British Columbia as of yesterday in relation to campaign funds is nothing short of appalling. Not only is it appalling, it's dangerous. And some of the things that happened yesterday may require a full police investigation and a report. But let me put it this way. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what has arisen directly from the perspicacity and the investigative reporting of the press in British Columbia, with specific reference to the work done by the BCTV NewsHour. And for all those out there who've been saying, as I tended to myself from the very beginning, that a couple of dirty tricks about a couple of little letters don't really matter, this is the finite position we find ourselves in. And it's not merely a pathetic two-bit scandal anymore. It's something much more serious. And perhaps I can best demonstrate it by saying that it's high time that the premiers of this province from here on in were compelled to take the blinders off their eyes and know officially of all the campaign funds collected on behalf of their party and expended to win or to lose office. In other words, away with the Nelson touch, away with this business that I, as the Premier, don't want to know, don't need to know, don't want to be in touch. The money's collected, it's properly spent. I don't want to know where it comes from. And a Premier can stand back and say, don't know anything about it. I'll have an investigation. I'll send Leslie Peterson in to do this and that and the next thing. But what has been disclosed in the past 24 hours is enough to make even my hair stand on end. I go back to the old days of the Coalition and the Liberals and the tin box underneath the bed, which led to all kinds of cynicism and God knows what else in elections in British Columbia. Now, what do we have here? We suddenly find that the treasurer of this social credit campaign fund, with money brought in from God knows where, gave, under the Election Expenses Act, a totally inaccurate return. We suddenly find that there's $250,000 not accounted for. Not a couple of $1,000 in petty cash. $250,000. And we're told, and I got this myself, that there were bills for 180,000 of that money lying around. They came in late. But that's not a couple of $1,000 either. 180,000. And we're told that there's another $65,000 that was given directly by Austin Taylor, one of the two co-treasurers, as I understand it, one of the two bagmen for the Social Credit Party. Another $65,000 went straight from Austin Taylor to Dan Campbell without Ian Adam, the other co-bagman, knowing a thing about it until yesterday. $65,000. Why did this come out? It came out because it was reported on BCTV NewsHour, and there were other stories in the Sun, that Dan had given a $1,000 bill to Ellen Mackay and didn't require any receipts. Mr. Peterson didn't see any receipts either. Receipts are not required. Mr. Peterson told me yesterday that Mr. Campbell has satisfied Mr. Adam that the $65,000 was spent. We don't know how the $65,000 came from Austin Taylor to Campbell. We don't know if it came in a check or if it came in a cash. We know of 3 instances where $1,000 bills in cash were used. Peterson said Mr. Campbell certified to Mr. Adam that the money was spent. And to Mr. Peterson's knowledge, although it's not detailed, there was some money, about $25,000 expended by Dan Campbell himself. There'd be for travel expenses, for hotels, for the now famous Victory Party, but that $40,000 went to the constituencies. Now, By saying that yesterday and including that 65,000 in this very belatedly amended return, does that mean that the constituency returns are now wrong? 40,000 of that went, of the Dan Campbell 65,000 he got from Austin Taylor, went to constituencies. Now, if the Election Expenses Act means anything at all, that's something else that's got to be straightened up. But I make the point as strongly as I can now that we must amend the law. What we must have is an Election Expenses Act which says monies given to a political party shall be properly recorded and publicly audited as to who gives it and how it is spent. We know that the general campaign fund expenses of social credit were, on the first return, $1,090,000. It's a lot of money. Suddenly, because of the pressure from the press, we now know that that sum of money is $1,335,000. How could you not know of $180,000 in outstanding bills? And how could the principal treasurer of this social credit campaign fund not know of the $65,000 his co-bagman, Austin Taylor, had given to Dan Campbell? This is, it's quite an appalling state of affairs. We have a higher standard, or we aim for a higher standard of morality and conduct, especially in running elections and running campaigns, than we did 25, 50, or 75 years ago. And I say, the Premier of the province of British Columbia, whoever he is, today or tomorrow or after the next election, can no longer stand back, as I've seen in the main for 30 years, saying, campaign funds. Oh, I don't know anything about campaign funds. We've got people who look after campaign funds. Do they come from outside the country? Oh, well, I'm 99% sure, and I'll check and find out. Mr. Peterson's check yesterday, brought on in a great panic by the Premier of the province, told us some things, made some glaring admissions, but didn't give us any detail. Sure, Peterson said, it was an oversight. It was neglect. There was $180,000 in bills that were not declared during the 60-day requirement of the Act. And then up comes the $65,000 in bills. What a way to run a campaign. What a way to give aid and comfort and confidence to the public that everything is tickety-boo and above board. Mr. Bennett now has a couple of very serious responsibilities. He must decide what to do about Mr. Campbell's future. Mr. Campbell, as you know, is a long-time social credit member, social credit cabinet minister, and has recently been appointed to BC House in Ottawa. Mr. Gardam apparently now decides the fate of Mr. Campbell. But we, the people of British Columbia, can decide the fate of governments in a very direct manner at the right time. And let's sincerely hope, and I'm not on an anti-social credit rampage particularly this morning, that we get no more double talk about where campaign funds come from or where campaign funds go to. Change the law. Write it clean. When you give money to a party, you give it to a specific place. Those books should be, an audit should be presented to the electoral officer, a proper audit, and punishment should be severe for those who do not follow the law properly. That's all I have to say. Get rid of the Nelson touch. Let's get back to open government when it comes to handling campaign funds, because the social credit government has demonstrated that they are not capable of handling $1,300,000 and accounting for it properly to their own people, far less to the public. Oh, break. My guest this morning is Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP, former Premier of the province. And we had, I might as well say, arranged this interview some days ago. And you happened to come in the morning, Mr. Barrett, when I find myself lambasting the social credit government. But that's beside the point. What comments do you have to make on the situation just now disclosed, Mr. Barrett?
Well, it's not an isolated incident we're talking about here. There have been a series of events that have been unfolding for the last 2.5 months, and aside from the fact that the Social Credit Party is in an awful lot of trouble, and Bill Bennett himself is in an awful lot of trouble over this, it does not create an atmosphere of confidence in the political system at a time when this whole country is going through a number of very severe crises. The focus becomes an attention on the behavior of politicians and political parties rather than on the issues.
And that's who's running the country in the meantime.
Exactly.
Mind you, you have deliberately, or have you deliberately kept a very low profile and just stayed away from it as a kind of unwritten gentleman's agreement, the dog not to eat dog?
No, not that at all. I've made a decision to stay away from it because it is a problem of their own making. This is a problem that they created internally, and they are responsible for cleaning up. They've had almost 3 months now to deal with this, and they've shown that they're totally inadequate in dealing with their own matters and their own affairs. There's not much that I can add to it by standing up and saying, oh, they're bad and they're nasty and they're wrong every single day. The point is that they're the only ones who know the truth of all of these matters, and they have done almost everything to avoid facing an accounting of the truth of the sequence of events around the phony letters, around the campaign funds, and everything else that's come up.
Manna from heaven for you politically, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know what useful purpose it serves. I can honestly say that I've felt that the government was a sleazy government right from the time they were in opposition. We saw the false accusations made when they were in opposition. Grace McCarthy ran around this province spreading a lie that we were creating a secret police force. Totally untrue.
You mean the ordering of 326 pistols for sheriffs or something?
That's right, which she followed through on.
Does that still bug you?
Well, I'm saying that I'm developing a pattern of events to relate to the fact that I'm not surprised about their behavior. The matter of falsifying a statement on the back of a check to Norm Levy about a car payment. All of that went on. The false statements about people on welfare in the Empress Hotel. They started to operate this way when they became the opposition, when Bill Bennett took over the leadership. So the sequence of events goes right back to their behavior in the House when they were in opposition.
You, in other words, do not expect any better a standard of conduct from Social Credit than presently displayed?
I have not witnessed any commitment to a higher standard of behavior than presently displayed. They started off that way. Once W.A.C. Bennett was gone, once the coalition was created, there were no principles, no philosophy. They wanted power at any cost. They were prepared to do anything and say anything for it.
To be quite blunt with you, Mr. Barrett, you've had a hands-off attitude because, generally speaking, your campaign funds have always been public, generally speaking.
That's true. That's true.
In other words, because you're an NDP organization, you collect it and you give an accounting for it at the end of the campaign.
Yeah, it's possible in any campaign for unpaid bills to show up, but not the amount that have been revealed here. It is possible that those statements at the end are not absolutely 100% accurate.
Because the NDP has other funds, as you and I know, which are used for other purposes.
Oh, yes, we have. We have the Colwell-Douglas Foundation. We have the Nanaimo Commonwealth Holding Society. We have the Bogue Foundation. These are separate registered funds for specific purposes under the laws that exist both in Canada and provincially.
Are the books freely and openly available to the press?
They are open by law under the Societies Act.
Well, Bogue Foundation's for education, isn't it?
Bogue Foundation for Education. The BC Holding Society is registered under the Societies Act. Colwell-Douglas Foundation is nationally registered. They're all tax deductible, open to the Revenue Department.
But the Nanaimo Holding Company has some funds which are available in political emergencies for the party, said Webster, reminding of the $80,000 for Bob Williams.
Bob Williams was hired by the Nanaimo Commonwealth Society, and the Nanaimo Commonwealth Society has done research for the party. But these, there's nothing illegal. These are straight above-board transactions.
Open and known.
Open and known, that's right.
One question then, Mr. Barrett. My proposition is that in 1979-80, why can't we know legally who's giving and what's spent?
There's really no reason why we can't. We were very close to having a new election law passed or presented to the House under our administration. We ran into a number of problems that are very real problems and perhaps best discussed in less political atmosphere than now. But one of the main stumbling blocks was that when you have a government supervision of election expenses, and a group of citizens want to come together and say that we're the neighborhood group of Oshkosh, and we're opposed to X, Y, and Z, and they buy an ad supporting someone or opposed to someone. The problem is, how do you curtail the expenditures of a party and not restrict the freedom of an individual or separate group, secondary or tertiary groups, to advertise?
I suppose so.
I was afraid that in the atmosphere that we were under at the time we were in government, that people would scream we were taking away freedoms if we restricted the expenditures by secondary and third parties. That's why we didn't go ahead with the bill. But I think in this present atmosphere, a logical case can now be made calmly to understand that a restriction on expenditures, some public funding, some private funding, and full disclosure can and must be accomplished. But it means restrictions on secondary and tertiary groups.
But I mean, surely the full disclosure could be there for what must be the principal campaign fund of a party.
Well, if the party is functioning properly, then there is no question that the party executive knows what the campaign funds are and how they've been spent. But we have witnessed that the Social Credit Party executive has confessed that they have not known all along what has been going on.
Haven't had a clue.
We have former presidents admitting that the funds existed secretly, and decisions were made out of the Premier's office. Now, it's impossible for me to understand how any Premier can say, I don't know anything about it, and yet the funds are administered out of his office by his staff. That's incredible. Mr. Tozer was the one who admitted that.
No, and the statements were made that Mr. Taylor was the fiscal chairman of that fund.
Yes, but there were two signatories, apparently, according to Mr. Tozer's statement, who is the Premier's personal aide, that there are two signatures required for the separate fund, one of which was revealed, and the other one that we don't know to this day.
Is there any reason why a premier of a province should not know what campaign funds are coming into his party?
Well, it's a great ideal goal, but I don't think it's realistic. I think that when I appeal for funds, I appeal to working people and trade unions and small businessmen.
This is where you have the edge, of course. You don't expect big money.
No, I don't expect it, but our party has received money, and nationally, from donors. I remember the Fu Hong Chop Suey Company donated money to us under the federal regulations. In Manitoba and other provinces, they've dealt with a limit on corporate donations. They have made that adjustment. The party itself knows where the money comes from. The leader of the party has a general idea. It is mythical to say that you don't know where a single penny comes from. You must be very honest about this. You obviously know where some of the support comes from.
You don't go for my blunt proposition to take the blinders off the eye and make the Premier of the province know where the money comes from.
I'm not opposed to that. No, rather than the Premier know, I think everybody in the public should know. I think you can list all of the donations, and you should have an anonymous donation of up to $100 or $150. But whatever arbitrary figure you set, they should be publicly listed. Where does the money come from and how it's spent? There's no problem with that.
Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP in Webster, after this break. One final minute or two on this dreadful business. We've got the police investigation into the Ritchie affair. We've got the police investigation into dirty tricks. Your former Attorney General is now asking for an independent assessment of the breaches of the Election Act on the potential of the Campbell Funds case. You, of course, endorse that.
Yes, I do. I've asked Alec MacDonald to prepare a small legal précis for me so that I can be better informed as to the legal implications of this.
The Election Expenses Act doesn't mean a damn thing at the moment.
It's
I could collect $2 million now, and I could spend it on pot, booze, hotels, anything I want to do, and all I have to do is write on the form, spent $2 million.
Well, yes, roughly that. But at least you have to do that much. Apparently, that much wasn't even done by Social Credit.
No, they just missed $250,000, though. I mean, it's only $250,000.
Come on, Jack. You know, the facts don't need repeating by me or by you. This is a very shameful day in the history of this province on a very great party that no longer exists. Social Credit no longer exists as it was originally founded in this province. It is a coalition that is governing BC.
Okay. I can't think of another question to ask you. Do you want to go home?
Well, we should talk about the kind of problems that have been that are very serious and are being discussed in other regions of this country. The number one problem is energy attached to inflation. We have serious problems here. We don't have a provincial position under the present administration. Lougheed is tweaking the nose of the federal government. The present provincial government is drifting. Ontario doesn't know which end is up in terms of the kind of direction to go. And we have a minority government in the country at a time that's not quite sure how it wants to handle the energy field.
Well, keep it simple for me this morning. What is your energy policy?
We must have, in my opinion, complete public control of all oil and gas in this country. We must have at the national level a counterpart of the British Columbia Petroleum Corporation that even the SOCREDs are keeping functioning. The marketing, the exploration, the development must be planned for a national energy policy. We don't have that now. We have this silly announcement by Dome yesterday saying, well, maybe we won't build this $100 million exploration ship when they've been given billions in total, the oil companies, to get on with exploration, and now they get a little cutback on taxes, and they say, well, we're going to cut off $100 million on a ship. Who's kidding who? The oil companies must not be allowed to dictate policy. We must have a national policy. Mr. Lougheed and Mr. Bennett must be told that this country comes before any single province. I'll fight for British Columbia, but the country is more important than any single province.
You're saying a national oil and gas corporation which shares the supplies across the country as acquired and controls the exploration too.
It must control exploration on the basis of guaranteeing that profits are returned here in Canada, not shipped out of the country, spent on exploration here in Canada. Tax concessions for exploration must be followed through with that money put back in the ground in exploration. We have the instrument with Petrocan. It can be expanded just a bit more to cover the marketing and the exploration.
That's a big step towards socialism, though, which the Tories and the Liberals are very much against, as you well know.
Well,
because, as you know, right at the moment, there's only a 15% withholding tax on the profits. They can take away everything else they want out of the country, the oil companies.
There comes a time, Jack, in my opinion, where an issue no longer can be identified as capitalism, socialism, fly-by-night, or any other ideology. It's a matter of national survival. Mexico has Petrocan. We are dealing with OPEC. Great Britain has BP. Norway has its fiscal and oil instrument. We have here in British Columbia, under the NDP, the British Columbia Petroleum Corporation, not touched by social credit. So you have the right and the left operating the British Columbia Petroleum Corporation that does control of the marketing, that encourages the exploration, regulates the price, and has a massive share of the profit for the public interest.
Does that, I hate to ask this question, I should know it, does the BC Petroleum Corporation only handle gas?
Yes, it only handles gas, but it can handle oil as well. But we don't have sufficient oil supply of our own in this province. But it can be expanded to handle oil if necessary.
Well, with the fight between Lougheed and Alberta, and David screaming like blue murder that he's going to have a recession, and we import 75% of our oil in this province.
Well, look, let's look at it this way. We are almost unbalanced. Between what we export and what we import, we're almost unbalanced. The only reason we export at this point is because it's a lower transportation cost to trade off our oil needs. We can have a two-price system. Not that we should be totally underpriced. I believe we should gradually move towards an international oil price. But here in British Columbia, under our policy, the NDP established a two-pricing system for gas. We sell for distribution here in British Columbia natural gas at $1.16 per 1,000 cubic feet,
right, so
that our domestic consumers, home users, and industrial users get a break, an edge, okay? We sell it now into the U.S. market at almost $4 U.S. We were heavily underpriced. We lost $225 million because of social credit inadequacy over the last 2.5 years. That's gone.
Can we blame that on the NEB?
No. Jack, I was on your show. We've had it out. You understood and others understood clearly that Bennett had never demanded of the NEB a comparative price for gas that matched the world price. Here he is talking about world prices for energy in Canada, while while for 2.5 years he'd been selling gas at a wholesale price into the U.S. market.
Webster and Dave Barrett, the NDP, after the break. Mr. Barrett, like many other kind of ordinary people, I'm kind of losing patience with the ecologists and Spitstezi and people against dams and whatnot. I tend to trust the system by which I can flip my switch and get electric light.
Yeah.
But now I see that there's concern that we've overbuilt our capacity after all these years of threatened brownouts and talk about this and that. What's happening?
Well, BC Hydro's gone off on a mad course of its own. It was a spoiled child when it was privately owned, and it became doubly spoiled when it became publicly owned. You know, and we, the NDP, are partly responsible for that. We fought for years to have Hydro publicly owned, and we assumed that once under public ownership that it would be totally responsive to the needs of the people. Instead, we took one monster that was a private monster and we made it a public monster, and we believed it would reform itself. It has not, and it needs a licking. It needs a good, hard licking. It is feeding on itself. When you find a combination of the Council of Forest Industries, environmental groups, and the NDP all appearing at the National Energy Board saying, hold it, they're going too far, then you begin to wonder what's going on. We have an overcapacity, we have huge debt. There is no reason why we should not sell uninterrupted power to make some money that does not further damage the ecology, that makes some good, solid cash that we need in this province. However, we must not commit ourselves to continue overbuilding to sell firm power into the U.S. that guarantees their industrial development and more unemployment here.
Except, mind you, on a good neighbor policy, we can't isolate ourselves from American power needs.
Look,
can we?
We, under our government, this is going to sound strange, but under the NDP, we emphasize the continued support of the grid system of north-south. When I went to the last energy policy, I presented a program of a national grid system, north-south, not an intercontinental policy, but north-south sharing of power to follow the hourly changes, and peak times change, and we can switch grids and share and cooperate. Nothing wrong with that. But a commitment of firm power over a long period of time means a sellout of our needed resource.
What you're saying is don't build special dams to sell power to the Americans.
Exactly.
Okay. What about anything else that's happening in the province these days apart from power, gas, dirty tricks and
the one
whatnot?
other thing about the gas that is of particular interest to industry in Vancouver Island, and
oh yeah,
we have the problem now of the federal government making a decision of allowing a huge increase in the export of natural gas.
oh yeah.
While we in this province have not yet continued the expansion of allowing gas to be available to people on a cheaper basis. People in Vancouver Island and some areas of this province are paying for home heating oil about 75 to 80 cents. It's going to be up to $1, $1.20. Natural gas is still a bargain, and we should make that bargain available to homeowners on Vancouver Island and to some industrial consumers over a shorter period of time on Vancouver Island as well. Now, with the massive exports that have been permitted, Vancouver Island is being shortchanged and having access to a firm load of natural gas.
See, with all this power planning, I can't quite understand how the NEB can say that we have 13 trillion feet surplus.
Well, there is
How
no
do we
such
know?
thing as a surplus.
No.
When they
It's
start
there and we sell it.
Yeah, it's there and we sell it and we have reserve. Look, we have long-term contracts with the United States that I believe, contrary to others, that we can meet. But I am opposed to the expansion of those contracts because all that's doing is delaying the day where the Americans have to make the adjustments that eventually must come in their own power needs.
There still is enough gas for Vancouver Island. If they're talking about putting a gas. Who wanted to put a gas
West
line?
Coast is looking at a gas pipeline, and also the provincial government. I'm not sure now that with the new, and I'm not making this a flat statement. I'm not sure now at this point whether or not those reserves can be guaranteed, since the federal government, without any caution from the provincial government, has agreed to allow huge amounts of gas to go beyond the borders.
Do you think Bennett's been so distracted by his own internal problems he's not been doing his job?
Well, we were promised an energy position months ago, and it's now delayed for a couple of months. I think some of the most interesting research work from a media point of view on this particular issue has been done, I apologize, by the Vancouver Sun, but they have, on the editorial page, they've done a pretty good analysis of the inadequacies in BC's position.
Last question, then we're going to go to the phones. Kitimat, Ray Williston, in the province, on the air with Webster, campaigning in a most outspoken fashion that Canada must have a West Coast oil port, that the day will come when we've got to bring in oil from China on a trade basis or Venezuela. And here we are, no Canadian port. Does seem to make some sense to me.
I don't understand why you say no Canadian port. We've been bringing oil into Burrard Inlet for years.
No supertanker port.
Of course no supertanker port. Do we need a supertanker port? Let's use our heads. We have successfully, without upsetting anybody, environmentalists or anyone else, been bringing in oil into Burrard Inlet in smaller ships with a good safety record in a narrow area for years. Now, what we do not have is a long-term statement on energy. Here we have Mr. Williston running off saying we need Kitimat. We have this and that pressure. Again, it comes back to the fact, Jack, in my opinion, no provincial energy policy. You'll recall that we should have another oil refinery in this province. Move that stuff out of Burrard Inlet eventually. That's got to get out of Burrard Inlet. Maybe we share a pipeline with the Americans. Maybe we do that. But there's no hurry to do anything overnight.
Our friend Williston says that there are 2 refineries up there on the route from Kitimat through to Kamloops, which are going to go dry one of these days because we'll have no oil for the fodder.
That is nonsense. As long as there is oil in Alberta, we get the 6-month renewable contracts from Alberta, no matter who is in government.
If we have a good national policy.
If we have a good national policy that says this is one country, and the oil needs must be met from the resources, and if they happen to be in one province, that means it's got to be shared, because Alberta may need trees from British Columbia.
Do you think that Clark eventually is going to have to impose his wishes on Lougheed?
I don't believe that Clark understands the Canadian Confederation the way it should be practiced. You do not come into a province and bargain away federal responsibilities to appear to be a good cooperator. I tell you very clearly that this is a cooperative nation. Lord Durham worked it out that way in the Durham report. It means the provinces fight for what they want, and they must fight for it. But the federal government is the senior government, and it must have the guts at the final line to say this is what the country needs.
Clark doesn't understand, but does he have the guts? He'll have to.
I don't think... I think that the Liberal government under Pierre Trudeau actually tried to develop a national energy policy, but Trudeau got distracted by Quebec and never was able to accomplish that federal policy.
Telephones to Dave Barrett, NDP, after the break. Go ahead to Mr. Barrett. In case you didn't recognize him, it's Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP, former premier of the province. Go ahead, please.
Yes, you made a statement earlier, Jack, to the effect that we, the people of British Columbia, can change governments.
Yeah.
How about if we do not get enumerated and put on the voters list?
That's another very good problem.
Well, whose fault is that if you're not enumerated?
Well, we were promised by Mr. Curtis that there would be a revamp of the Elections Act, specifically related to remuneration. We hope that that will be presented at the session, whenever it's called. We hope that that'll be done. That's a very valid complaint. It's very archaic, the system we have now.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Barrett.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned semantics, ethics, and good conduct in politics earlier in your topic.
Not semantics.
This is a dirty tricks question about hiding some marked cards up one's sleeves with which to lie and cheat in the grand old game of political poker when you don't know how to hold them or when to fold them. Will you tell us the truth about your former NDP employee that now is a news director with BCTV and has a squad of 8 reporters assigned to the...
Just one moment, please. I'm going to get in on this act.
Discredit and pressure Premier Bennett is...
No, just 1 second, please. I'm running this program, and I have been...
What are Gestapo goon squads?
Okay, now I'm going to answer that question, Mr. Barrett, if you'll forgive me. I have been anticipating just such an attack on our news hour. And I think I might as well mention the name of Keith Bradbury.
Yes.
I'm going to answer your question. I've known Bradbury for a long, long time. Keith at one time, and I haven't checked this with him, he may cut my throat for saying this, did some work for the Berger campaign, as I recall. Yeah. Keith at one time was an article law student, as I recall. Keith at one time, many years ago, 10 years or more ago, did some work, I think, on an odd basis for the NDP.
As a strong opponent of mine.
Keith, as a strong opponent of Barrett's, you may well know, Keith Bradbury has done a scrupulously first-class, balanced, excellent job of investigative reporting, which I would have been proud to do, and I will not accept this kind of cheap, shoddy response to embarrassment of social creditors, sir, and I put that straight in your pipe and you may smoke it. I've watched very closely how the news hour has handled this thing, and I'll tell you right off the top, I was very nervous. I thought, just a moment, I'm going to finish. You've made an attack on a colleague of mine, and I thought at first, he's pushing it too hard. Just let me finish. As of, a couple of weeks ago, I realized that Bradbury and his reporters were on the dead right track, and the living proof of it came yesterday afternoon when I was interviewing Mr. Les Peterson, the General Campaign Chairman. And from astute reporting, you've had a proper investigative study done and presented to you on the air, which has forced the government to act, and I will not tolerate this smear, slimy campaign. Thank you, sir. Forgive me. Take a break. I got to cool off. I tend to get hostile when my ox is gored.
Well, look, I think it's understandable. When we were under attack, when we were in government, there were times when we felt that reporters were particularly harsh on us as a government, and I can understand partisan NDPers or partisan Socreds getting upset when their favorites are under attack. It is the media's responsibility to tell it as it is. If it is not true, then I'll sue you from here to Timbuktu. That's the risk you take.
Let me remind you of a couple of things. When I nailed you to the cross on that stupid $10,000 pension to somebody in BC Hydro,
That's right.
I can't remember his name anymore.
Yeah, Casbegs.
Casbegs.
Yeah.
When you were nailed to the cross on your verbal indiscretions and your $100 million that was done by people like Webster and Bradbury.
It was done by people who I accept in public life whose job it is to keep their eye on politicians.
And when you turned like a wild animal on Marjorie Nichols one day, you got your comeuppance as you properly should have done.
I turned on Marge not like a wild animal, but I got my comeuppance as I should have done. And you think I got it bad publicly. You should have heard what I got when I got home.
To your wife.
But look, Jack, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Politics has to be open to absolute scrutiny. The information that came out yesterday came out because reporters dug it out, not because they made it up. If they'd made it up, you'd be in court and everybody else would be today.
That's right. Nobody asked them to make the statements. Nobody asked Bennett appointed Peterson. Okay, Vernon, BC.
Yeah. A few days before the last provincial election, the Social Credit come up with a letter about Barrett given permission for uranium exploration. Barrett never had a chance to explain the letter. But I think you'll find a few days before the next election, the Social Credit will come up with some story where the NDP have got contributions from some unknown source. We won't hear anything about it until a couple days before the election.
Yeah.
Now, I do know where the NDP get their money. In the Vernon area, they sold apple juice. We sponsor dances. We have raffles. This is where the NDP get their campaign money from private, individual people, and from small sources. Thank you.
Well, Bill Bennett attacked me last week as having been a former bagman for the party. I said, yes, I used to raise money for the party, and the address to send the money in is 517 East Broadway.
Oh, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about Les Peterson this morning. He tells me that there is a negative balance in the account run by Ian Adam. A negative balance. That means it's broke. And he also said to me with a smile on his face, please send donations. Go ahead. Winfield.
Good morning, Mr. Webster and Mr. Barrett. I just have two things I'd like to say. First of all, Jack has certainly made our mornings very interesting. And secondly, Dave, you keep up the good work. It looks to me like we've hung out the rope. Social credit have grabbed the rope, and they're now using enough of it to hang themselves.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster. Very knowledgeable program this morning. It's Back to the Barricades, Jack. I'd like to take your program back to 1975, if I may. Now, this was the year of Mr. Barrett's greatest dilemma, when rapidly overtaking him was the disaster of the cutbacks, as he had found out that he had borrowed overseas more money than he could possibly run the economy of BC on.
False. Absolutely false.
Where it came to the point where he would have to cut his welfare resources back to the degree that it would hurt and hurt and hurt and destroy his party. So he quickly decided to escape the disaster and called an election in the middle of the winter, and he lost it. The voice of the people of British Columbia spoke at that time.
Look, I want to tell you that we certainly... Okay.
Are you finished? Okay, just a minute. That camera.
Okay. We certainly lost the election. We did not borrow money overseas or anyone else for general funds or general accounting. That charge has never been made or even suggested, even by social credit. The first borrowings by BC Hydro were made during our administration because of the shortfall of the Columbia River Treaty. Even Mr. Jack Davis admits that. In terms of general revenue, there is a major dispute about the amount of money. We left $500 million in assets. Where do you think all that money that was collected in brick came from? Out of the sky? Those were assets bought under the New Democratic Party.
Who was it did the survey of your finances when your government left?
It was to be Ian Adam at first, and then it was discovered as his connection with social credit.
Oh, you mean Mr. Adam, the co-treasurer of the secret campaign
Clarkson
funds?
Gordon. I'm not saying that Clarkson Gordon is an incorrect firm, but they also admitted that they were only giving figures based on the information given to them.
Thank you very much, sir. Where am I going? Go ahead, please.
Yes, a couple of points of information for Dave.
Let me say something first. Do you see how the moment you get into this orangutan battle on the level of campaign funds, we all go back to the old basic confrontations?
It is very clear-cut in this province. There are 2 points of view politically. What has happened to that debate of 2 points of view that existed under W.A.C. Bennett and the NDP is that a drive for power, just to hang on, to frustrate change, brought about a coalition that has abandoned philosophy and principle. That's bad for the system, and it reduces itself to those kind of wild attacks.
But there must be the free enterprise so-called alternative to you.
There has to be. There has to be in the British parliamentary system. But this is not a free enterprise alternative. This is a coalition for power. The Liberals and the Conservatives must revive, and the original social credit must survive to present an option. This is a coalition of opportunists.
You are being a little bit specious in that. I'm making the point, Mr. Barrett, very clearly that you are the left-wing alternative. There's only room really for 2 parties in our system in a small legislature, and you must have a free enterprise alternative, even if it is a form of coalition.
Look,
and their philosophy is clear. It's non-socialist philosophy in the main.
They are destroying an essential ingredient in the British parliamentary system, and that is a clear statement from a conservative, principled point of view.
Go ahead, please, now.
Right, a couple of points of information for Dave Barrett from BC Hydro bus driver, Ray, Light Rapid Transit, and the UTA. They've been talking about Light Rapid Transit coming in about 1985. Up the old Central Park line. When your government was in power, Hydro started negotiations with the CPR to have light rapid transit going down the CPR lines down to the Brard Inlet. And when Bennett came into power, that stopped right there. Now, also when you were in power, there were 250 buses ordered from back east, and when Bennett got into power, he tried to stop it, and General Motors...
Okay, we've got enough. Mr. Barrett.
Well, first of all, it's quite true that we were committed to light rapid transit. The Jim Lorimer did a terrific job. That's how the C buses came about. We built those C buses here by BC working people in BC-owned shipyards. The whole idea was to integrate light rapid transit with C bus through the Lower Mainland. We did focus on buses as the interim need. Unfortunately, they've been cut back under the SOCREDs. But we will eventually need light rapid transit. I'm pleased with the preliminary report I've heard on the news last night that they're talking about LRT, light rapid transit, with subway. That is the eventual necessary goal for the Lower Mainland.
You know what annoys me about this whole thing, Mr. Barrett, and I heard Van der Zalm talking about taking away the GVRD's powers altogether. Is it not the duty of a government in Victoria not to have this messing about with UTA, back and forward, lack of decision, to impose the system on the municipalities?
Look, do you remember that we did that in Kamloops and Kelowna, and the screaming, the hollering, the yelling, that we imposed this kind of decision? Now, a government has to have guts. Yes, you lose votes by it, but in the long run, you're proven right.
We've wasted the last 5 years or more on light rapid transit.
We have wasted 5 years.
Double the cost.
No question about it. We had good cooperation with the Lower Mainland. We were moving in a direction, and if you want to stall, keep on saying, well, it's the GVRD's fault, the GVRD's fault. We suffered at the polls because of some tough decisions we made.
And just by the way, about the Tories in Ottawa, I don't care what you might think of the Tories, they're certainly your enemies philosophically. You've got to give this guy Crosby and this guy Clark a lot of credit for guts, if for nothing else. They were hanged on the world financial situation, and they've come in and they've said, you're going to pay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to saying you got to pay, but I want to say them to the oil companies, to the large multinational corporations, and to those who have been draining huge profits out of this country for years, including internally the banking system that is still getting away with usurious rates in this country and not paying its fair share.
Webster and Dave Barrett, thank you, sir, after the break. Go ahead to Dave Barrett, please.
Yes, I was wondering about the allegations in Alberta where the union workers in the civil service are complaining, and there's now an investigation that the union funds were taken to the by the stewards in the shop to the members and told to donate money to the candidate of the NDP party. It is in the Columbian, December the 8th, and there were many more that have been told from the shop floor to go and donate union funds, and many of them did not even believe in the philosophy of the NDP, but they had to take from their own funds, the union funds, and donate.
Okay, let's have a little history of what you had when you were Premier.
You must understand, you have to go a little bit further, how I became leader of the party. I made it very clear in my campaign for leadership that I wanted an arm's-length relationship with the trade union movement, so that the trade union movement could deal with their problems, the party deal with us. In terms of money to the party from the trade union movement or any other group, it has to be voted on by that group and submitted on that basis. I made it very clear. The affiliation structure to the party also makes that very clear here in British Columbia. I don't know about Alberta, but I'm talking about right here in BC. The trade union members have to vote on any donation.
Didn't we have a law at one time?
Yes, WAC brought in a law saying that the unions would not be allowed to contribute to a political party, but corporations could.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Hello, I was just wondering, or going to ask about the prices of oil and that, like, for independent truck drivers, okay? When you're getting 65 cents a mile and the price of oil and fuel has gone up, like if you're paying 2.6 cents now, and with the price of diesel, where is that going to put the economy or the independent trucker, period?
Well, the independent trucker is going to have to ask for an increase. There's no question about it. The Motor Carrier Commission is going to have to deal immediately with their request. They've got a legitimate request, and it has to be dealt with quickly. Otherwise, will lead to the kind of disruption that the United States had with the independent truckers just shutting down. They couldn't, there's no use running at a loss. Their problem has to be dealt with very quickly.
You know, and something that we all missed, a guy phoned me who runs an independent service station in the interior yesterday, and while we got the 4 cents a litre, which is what, 18 cents a gallon?
Yeah.
The very day before, the oil companies put up regular 2.7, unleaded 3.6 cents, and super unleaded 4.5 cents. So in fact, the increase is, 25 cents a gallon.
Jack,
and they can put up the price whenever they want, can't they?
There is no question that the oil companies are getting away with murder. I don't mind a tough budget, but it has to be tough on them.
I finally found the question I want to ask you on that. If the Canadian government turned around and really got a grip on the oil companies, have they not got the means to cut our throats? Are they not so powerful that they have the means to cut our throats?
In a game, and I describe it loosely as a game, in a game like this, it all depends on who holds the cards. We hold the cards. We have oil and gas sufficient for our own needs in this country. Now, the Arabs thumbed their nose at the oil companies. Venezuela did it. The Mexicans did it years ago. Norway has done it. Now, we're the only major industrialized nation that doesn't have a national hold on its energy resources.
Except the U.S.?
Well, the U.S., look, the interesting thing is there are some Republicans, like Church and others, who are now beginning to say in the United States that they want a national energy corporation to deal with their problems down there.
Go ahead to Dave Barrett.
Yeah, good morning, Dave.
Good morning.
I wonder if your party will consider building on the island a thermal station to produce hydro.
I think one of the most attractive things on the island, first of all, there's coal at the northern end of the island has to be looked at, and also the burning of wood waste. But you can't ask the industry to convert overnight to wood waste, but that's a long-term goal. The wood waste that exists on the island is something that can produce a significant amount of power in the long term.
Make the mills run on wood waste?
Yes, run on their own wood waste.
No, but what I'm talking about is bringing a gas line to the island, and also that gas line will serve two purposes.
I'm in favor of the gas line to the island. However, I'm worried about it now in terms of can we guarantee the kind of supplies over a period long enough to amortize the price of that pipeline. With the new exports allowed by the National Energy Board, I'm not sure, I'm not confident that we have enough reserves for our own need guaranteed over that period of time.
Thank you. Go ahead from Vernon.
Yeah, Jack, I'm going to jack your guest up a little bit there this morning. I've got to take you back to the Bennett thing because of the time that it took me to get through. But, Dave, I've been a supporter of yours since way back in the Millardville Fraser Mills days. But you're making me mad. All this bloody pussyfooting with this outfit and their dirty tricks, it's not a shameful thing. It's out and out illegal corruption. And I want to know, you've cleaned up your image and gone from the street fighter to the polished politician. And I think it's time that you got mad and called a spade because Wacky Bennett sold this country to the Americans piece by piece for years. And now Sonny has stepped in and picked up the ball. And if you don't pull your finger out and take this province over and start running it, there isn't going to be anything left for you to take over, lad.
Look, it's up to the people of this province. Let me repeat that very calmly. It's up to the people of this province to compare the two governments, and they make up their mind who they want to run this province. They made a decision 7 months ago. We must live with that within the law. There is a police investigation on the dirty tricks. I called for that. It's been granted. This other problem is still up in the air. But aside from those problems, if you don't think I'm still a fighter for this province, you better take another drink of coffee and take a look at our record, what we did, what we intend to do, and how we intend to do it. We're still there. We're still fighting. But that's their mess. Social credit created that mess. Let the public of British Columbia see their mess without any yelling or hollering or interference by me or anyone else. They created the mess. They're in it. They're not capable of cleaning up their own mess. Let people judge it on that basis.
Okay, now that's all well and good, but I think that that it's time, rather than for you to just sit back, I think it's time for you to take a very solid stance and make sure that this thing isn't glossed over, because
there is no way it's going to be glossed over. My good friend, there is no way it's going to be glossed over. When is the next session going to be called? When are we going to get a chance to ask questions in the House of those cabinet ministers who have been silent all the while this is going on? If you think this is going to be glossed over, you've got another thing coming. Why is Bill Bennett afraid to call the House together while we're making our salary and not working?
Thank you, sir. When will the House be called? What's your guess? Middle of March?
Lord knows, Jack. Even WAC set a policy of letting you know when the House was going to sit. I called, let the opposition party people know when the House is going to sit. We don't have even that kind of courtesy by this present administration.
When is he bound to call a session? Sometime during the year?
Well, March 31st is the end of the fiscal year. If we come in the last week of March, we'd be faced with an interim supply bill, which I don't think that we would stop, but probably he'd have to call it before the end of March 31st.
For his interim supply, if not for a complete budget?
That's right.
When should it be called?
It should be called no later than the third week in January, in my opinion.
Webster and Dave Barrett, after the break. Go ahead, please, to Dave Barrett.
Yes, I have a question, but first of all, I have a comment with reference to the enumeration that you mentioned. In that hurriedly called NDP election in 1975, citizens had to register themselves. There was absolutely no enumeration whatsoever for that election.
It was a mess.
What did you say, Mr. Barrett?
It was a mess.
It was a mess.
It was a mess.
Your fault.
Yes, no question about it. It was a mess. We did not amend the Elections Act, to my eternal regret. I mentioned earlier one of the snags was around the expenses thing. It hasn't been amended since. It was a mess. It was a mess before us. It was a mess with us, and it's still a mess.
We've had redistribution, no?
I just wanted to clear the thing on that, but the question is, during the election, the International Brotherhood of Painters and Allied Trades from Washington, D.C., under the signature of the president of that union,
urged members to support the NDP.
Are you telling...
That was stupid.
Barrett, that...
What was that?
That was stupid. I said so in the election.
No, but are you telling us they did not supply money along with that two-page letter?
No, they did not supply money along with a stupid two-page letter. Any donations must come from the local unions, must come through affiliation structure.
Well, did they pass it on through the local union?
No, they did not. Well, if any union money goes anywhere, it's down to the states, not back up. That's a long-term problem with the trade union movement.
That's a difficult one to believe.
Well, you want to check it out? Come down and sit down with Yvonne Koch. You know, she's the provincial secretary. She's right there.
Does she have all of the donations listed there?
She has the donations listed. There is no money from American unions sent up from the United States.
And she would allow one to inspect that, would she?
I made a standing offer.
Right.
To Social Credit.
Will she
open your
it?
books and we'll open our books. Go down and talk to her. We've got nothing to hide.
Right. I just can't, buy that, really, because...
Well, look, I can't sell it to you. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm trying to tell you the reality. Our books are open and have been. And we make no apology for that. We're not trying to appear to be saints while the others are sinners. This is just a matter of record, madam. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments. One on the chap that turned around and said that Bennett was spending all this money. He did more for people, invalids, and that through the social services than any other previous government.
With WAC or Bill?
Pardon me, Barrett did more.
Oh, Barrett did more.
Barrett definitely did more. We know a couple people that had polio and that, and they were on social assistance.
Right, just a minute. I'm sure you can praise Barrett, but I want to remind you of another thing when I nagged you to death. I don't have to justify myself. When
Are you secret social credit agent?
No, but when your people, my old friend Levy, expanded the handicapped allowance, and the handicapped allowance went to a number of regular callers at my old studio in Gastown, and they gave them $150 a month extra for booze. It killed many of them earlier than they should have died.
Lord knows. I don't know the instances you're talking about, but mistakes were made during our administration as mistakes have been made by the Socreds. They wiped out an insurance company through deregulation. You can point at any time to any government mistakes.
I'm making the point that for the functions of the Websters and the Bradburys and the Marjorie Nichols of the world, that we are non-partisan. We're against you all.
You have embarrassed us terribly when we were in government. You were embarrassing this government. You embarrassed any government. No one in the media should have to apologize for doing their job.
Are you planning to retire, or are you going to lead the NDP into the next election?
I am leading the New Democratic Party into the next provincial election. I made that commitment in September. I did seriously consider leaving. I make no bones about that. I did seriously think I was going to step down.
And now, because of the incompetence and stupidness of social credit and campaign funds, you have the bit between your teeth and you will walk in without even campaigning.
That is not the result of... this will pass. They'll come out of it damaged, but still intact. The real issues are not the Lettergate, not the campaign funds. The issue of how they've handled these stories is very, very serious. But the real issues are the economy, inflation, and energy policy and unemployment in this province. And that's what we should be dealing with.
Did you finish, caller?
Yeah, but what about these guys here? Little guys can run around and do whatever they want. And for instance, this officer that got hit here in New West, innocent bystander, just an auxiliary officer.
Well, we did that on the air the other day, and very fortunately we can tell you who he now is covered under a special ruling of the Compensation Board.
Yeah, but I mean, what's going to happen to Bennett and them who got
Doesn't fit in, old boy, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
I wonder, would you please correct me if I am wrong? When your platform, part of your platform policy was that if you got into power or were elected, you would not be Minister of Finance like the late W.A.C. Bennett was.
Yeah. And then when we got elected, I changed my mind. I hung on to the portfolio simply because I discovered that W.A.C. Bennett was right in handling that portfolio. There was a great deal to learn in a short period of time, and that was the best way to do it, and I said that publicly. Then, towards the third year of the administration, I appointed Dave Stupich, who was a chartered accountant, to the Minister of Finance. That's correct. That's correct.
Next, I wanted to ask you, did you in any way condone any of the things that were going on which you disapproved of originally and which you condemned as, bleeding the people dry, left, blah, 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 blah?
Well, I don't know what blah, blah, blah means. You have to be specific, madam.
Just that things were going on, shall we say, with the holdings of the BC regime.
Can you be specific? Are you talking about the old PGE, where there were a lot of problems?
West Coast
All
Transmission?
the different things that were going on, the railway, this, that.
Sure. No, she's got a good point.
Yeah, sure. The railway, yes, definitely. What we did with the railway was, you'll recall, within 2 months, we halted the construction on the northern lines. We asked for a report, and I filed all of that information in June of 1975 in the House. Price Waterhouse, engineering studies, all of it. It's all a matter of public record. All of it was there. All of it was regurgitated through the Royal Commission. In terms of another thing we condemned was the contract to sell natural gas in the States. We changed that. We set up the Petroleum Corporation. Social Credit voted against it, screamed against it, hollered against it, and now they quietly, thank goodness it's there.
But I think that what she's really getting at, is there not a tendency and a trend when a government changes, that the new boy is rather kind about any skeletons they know buried and leave them buried?
If I have any confession to make, I could say that I honestly erred on the error of being, in the arena of being kind, yes. I confess that.
Personally.
Okay, ma'am. No, I remember.
Yeah.
Governments tend, when they take power, to say, okay, they're out now. There are a couple of skeletons we could dig up.
I
but
could
we
have
won't."
done the hatchet job on the BC Rail. I could have done that hatchet job. I could have done a hatchet job on the gas contracts. There are a number of other areas. My attitude was, we've proven the point by winning an election. Let's get on with the job.
Question, not disassociated question. Do you think the Libs and the NDP will turn up tonight and defeat the Tories?
I think there's a very good chance of it. I believe that the Liberals are serious about defeating the Tories. I believe that Pierre Trudeau has been given a kiss of life.
I bet you $1 that not enough Liberals turn up tonight to defeat the Tories. $1, even money.
Is that in cash or a check? I'll bet you $1. I'll bet you $1 on that. I think they will turn up.
Oh, you a gambler?
Well, for $1, I can risk it.
No moral fiber at all?
Well, it's that or next Wednesday.
Wait like at 4 quarters.
I don't have $1 on me.
We don't want to any paper money to change hands these days.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough?
Fair enough.
You can give me an IOU after the break. Notice how well dressed I am on television?
Yes, yeah.
Changed from the old days in Gastown.
Well, it's a change for both of us.
Oh, we're both better dressed.
Well, we're both better looking.
How much weight have you lost?
Almost 17 pounds.
Very good indeed.
Well, look, for any of those people out there that have the same problem I have of controlling their weight, I have no advice but complete sympathy.
Is that your own hair?
Yes, my own hair, natural coloring, slowly going gray, enjoying a beautiful 49th year of life with 3 beautiful children and a great wife.
Enough of a commercial. No,
well, I'm a very lucky man.
Do you use Grecian formula?
No, do not use Grecian formula.
Just wondered.
Okay.
Go ahead. Try to lighten up what's been a very heavy bleeding program.
It has been very heavy.
Good morning, Jack. Word for Mr. Barrett. I'd like to have him enlarge upon the statement that he made about Grace McCarthy. I think that's really dastardly for anyone to come up with a statement that he came up with.
What did he say about Grace McCarthy?
Well, it was something about a paperwork. He said it just on your program. I was watching it.
She went around this province saying that the NDP was building a secret police force. The Premier called me a National Socialist last spring. Those are matters of fact.
Yes, but Mr. Barrett, do you realize what you said? There has been no human resource minister ever, as far as I can remember, in the province of British Columbia that has given sincerity to the people, the poor people of this.
I have not said anything about her role as Minister of Human Resources. At the beginning of the program, in discussion of social credit history, I made this statement, and I say it again. During the time she was in opposition, she went around this province spreading a false story that the NDP was setting up a secret police force. We have asked her in the House since that time, since she's been a minister, to apologize for that statement. She has not done so.
Go ahead from Williams Lake.
Yes, I'll make it brief because I'm a social credit supporter and I know I'll be cut off. I'd just like to say that it's very disappointing to a lot of us that at election time we have to pay a lot of money to get a little advertising on BCTV, and the rest of the year the NDP gets theirs free every day of the week. Thank you very much.
Good. No comment, please.
I have been on this show since the election. I don't know.
Geez, I'm getting mad this morning.
Okay. It's the Yuletide spirit.
Merry Christmas, wherever you are. Go ahead, please.
Webster?
Yeah.
I want to get out for 1 second of these grubby little provincial politics and make a comment from somebody who's, out of province, out of country almost.
Just got off the boat from England.
Beg your pardon?
Just off the boat from England.
England is almost right, yes. And I just want to say that this Mr. Barrett is one of the most intelligent, sensitive statesmen and politicians I've ever heard, anywhere.
How dare you say that on this program? Politicians do not come here to be praised.
I can't imagine why he's not the Premier.
Well, if you've got 20 minutes, I'll tell you. Thank you. Say, where are you from?
I'm from England.
Look, if you go to the Federal Development Bank in Cranbrook and tell them...
I'm from England via Ireland.
And, you know, I think this man is a...
I can tell you how to raise money to start a funeral home, even if you are only a visitor from the Canadian taxpayer. You don't understand the question. Thank you, sir. You want to say Merry Christmas to your secret admirer?
Well,
I say Merry Christmas to Barrett, and I hope he's the next Premier.
well, Merry Christmas
None
to
of
you.
your business.
I am only as a reflection of a commitment to the system that I have grown to respect as the best. At one time, I wondered about the British parliamentary system, but not any longer. The system is far more important than any one of us politicians.
Hear, hear. And Margaret Thatcher is wonderful.
No, she's not. Her policies are not, but the system is good.
It works, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
No, no. Where am I going?
Okay.
Oh, no more. Well, Mr. Barrett, that was an intriguing session this morning. I started off with my hyperbole. You kept it reasonably cool most of the way. I trust you have a reasonably quiet Christmas season.
Well, I'm looking forward to our family being all together. We're at our children are at the age now where they've left home, but they'll all be together. I just wish very sincerely everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Everybody?
Everybody. Jack, honest, I can say this very honestly. I only wish that everybody could be as happy as I am in my private life. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about my private life.
Dave Barrett, leader of the NDP in British Columbia. My name is Webster, and I shall return with some happy words after the break. You have some news for me, Miss Linda.
You mean about our last live show before Christmas tomorrow?
Which is tomorrow, and after that we're going to have 13 magnificent reruns, rebroadcasts of the best of you-know-who. And for tomorrow we have something kind of special.
Well, we have Dr. Pat McGear is going to be with us, and I believe we might be joining the Anik B satellite tomorrow.
We're going on the satellite tomorrow to cover the North Country.
Yes.
My, how lucky they are. But we're looking forward to it too. And we have a few things going for tomorrow morning. I may have more about the FBDB tomorrow morning. I'm not sure yet. See you at 9 a.m. precisely.